Hello and welcome to awB Live, this monthly space that we share together where we engage with just people who are active across this country in impacting the aging experience of Black elders. And at Aging While Black, we envision a society where Black elders are celebrated, supported, and empowered to thrive in every aspect of life. And this month, I am excited to welcome my friend, Dr. Marilyn French Hubbard, to awB Live. Welcome, Dr. Hubbard.
Good morning and thank you. I guess it's afternoon. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, we're glad that you are here, and hopefully, people will be watching this at all hours because it is on our YouTube channel and it's happening live. But afterwards, it will be added to the playlist on our YouTube channel, and people tend to watch whenever is most convenient for them. And so, over the last few days, we've shared just a little bit about you and your work. But we always want to give folks an opportunity to introduce themselves in a way that feels most meaningful and authentic for them. And so, how would you introduce yourself to the Aging While Black community?
Okay. I can just say by being authentically, sometimes I'm in the space of I know who I used to be, but I'm trying to figure out who I am right now. So if you'd asked me before, I would kind of give you my credentials and where I worked and stuff like that. But for this audience, I just want people to know who I really am. I'm blessed, highly favored, in a space now where I can really give back to the community in ways that I feel are important. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm someone who's always believed in serving some kind of way that's part of my DNA. I did spend over 25 years in corporate America at senior levels, and not touching the people in the way that I wanted to as I was in that environment. But I've taken that learning now to come back to where I came from to be able to have an impact on things that are really important to me. So I'm speaking to you from Detroit. I've been as well as a corporate executive family caregiver. And after retirement, that's when a lot of things begin to sink in terms of where I am now and what I'm doing and what's important to me. So right now, I'm living in the space, your space of aging while black, and really having
Our
that
space.
space. Okay. Mhm.
Yeah. So that is so rich on so many levels, and there's so much that we could unpack there. I especially just want to name this really important transition from here is how I used to show up and what I used to do, and now this is how I show up and what I do now. And I'll unpack that more with you at another time, but there's
Oh,
so
no
much
problem.
there.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what does the concept aging while black bring to mind for you?
Well, the concept, and I have to say, when I first met you, saw you, the branding, and not even knowing what was behind it, it just kind of resonated with me. So, aging while black, to me, feels like family, feels like community, feels like a relevant conversation that I want to be in right now, feels like a safe space, feels like the people I want to play with right now in my life, um, and hope, uh, relevancy, really relevancy. And so it's a good space, and for me, it's a very timely space to be in.
Man, there's so much that you said there, Dr. Hubbard, that just really causes my spirit to smile. Because as you well know, in the really, spaces where you've been in, where you've created things, where you've been a part of helping something come to life, and you have a motivation, you have an aspiration for it. Uh, but the moment when people say back to you the very things that you were hoping for, there's very little in life that compares to that. And what you described uh, about the relevancy, about a space being safe, about where I want to be, uh, where you almost described a family reunion. Uh, it's the kind of space that when we started this, we wanted to curate, and we wanted to curate that kind of culture that had aging blackness at the center of it. And so, thank you for those words. Uh, I can tell you now, we're going to clip those and with your permission, use them in other
Oh,
ways
sure.
and to talk about aging while black.
And
And
I will just say for me, it's so timely. Because
say more about that.
I'm at a space in life. It's kind of like I planned my career. I planned my retirement. So, my retirement is just the way I have planned it. So I'm at a space between retirement and end of life. Okay. And so there's a lot of space between that time. And so I had decided that I didn't want to waste this time. I just did not want to waste the time. But I didn't want to be an idle conversation during this time. I wanted to be doing something impactful. I'm a golfer. I played lots of golf, but lots of golf wasn't getting it for me. And so, and then the aging while black, while I was at, say, one of the junctures of aging while black in the caregiving space, that was the space I had decided that, I wanted to spend my time in. Aging while black presented the umbrella. So it's opened up my whole thinking about it. So now I'm just real excited to be working with you and aligned with you to be able to say this is just a piece of aging while black.
But it is a couple of things. First of all, it is a really, really important piece because this caregiving and caregiver space is so really critical, and it will only become increasingly more critical to the well-being of all people who are aging, but especially aging Black people in America. And so it's a really, really important space that you're in. The second thing that I want to say to you is that the next time I come to Detroit, I will let you know in advance so you can book us a tea time while,
Okay.
while, while,
Okay.
while I'm there so we can make certain that we take care of the important stuff too.
Great.
So, talking about caregivers, tell us about the Detroit Family Caregivers Project.
Okay, well, the Detroit Family Caregivers Project is a work in progress and it's an organic initiative that's just kind of growing as we learn. And how the project came to being, I had been a family caregiver, but not realizing I was a family caregiver. I had worked in corporate American healthcare for like 25 years or so, and I knew how to navigate the healthcare system. So within my circle of friends, people would always call me, how do you do this? How do you do that? So I knew that very well. And also part of my job and was to be with people in the community as they were going through health challenges. But I kind of took that a little further because of who I am. So I really helped our people, help Black people understand some things that they may not understand. So after, uh, again, like after I retired and got into this space again, not knowing that I was a caregiver, but caring for people after I left my job. And I was literally at the bedside of about a dozen people in my family and close circle of friends as they took their last breath. Still not knowing I was a caregiver, just doing what I do. I help my friend, I help my sister, I help somebody else's sister, and I burn out. I burn out. I just, didn't know how to take care of myself because people were in need and they needed me. And I think I have this need to be needed. And so I was reaching out. And so one of my friends that, one of the last people that I took care of with this unawareness of of the role I was playing, did not have her advanced directives in order. And so, or any of the other critical documents. And so I was a friend, not a family member. And so there was no documentation. So she was telling me all of the things that she wanted, but she was just telling me as a friend, it was not documented. She was estranged from her family. But when it came down, she had brain cancer. When it came down that she just had a few weeks to live, and she had asked me not to call her family, but I had to call her family to say, this is what's going on. So when they came, the first thing they did was get rid of me, and they went straight to the bank. And so that just hurt my feelings. She had told me what she wanted, but there was nothing on paper. So within that experience, I started searching out to see, well, what needed to be done, because I wanted to make sure that this would not happen to anyone else. So in my search for that, I attended a conference, and I think you and I met at a CTAC conference, a Center to Transform Advanced Care. And so I was looking for, I didn't even know I was in healthcare for all those years. I didn't know much about advanced directives, didn't have them for myself. And so I wanted to know more about advanced directives. And then after I got into the space, I found that advanced directives are only the forms that you fill out in a larger space of advanced care planning. And at that time, I had, worked my way into the CTAC space. And they came to me and said that we have a funder. The Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation is interested in the things that you're interested in. And we see that you're really interested in this. Would you talk to us? And so it was just a perfect match, me with my background and them with their need. And then the need that they had identified was looking at the role that faith communities could play in the advanced care planning process. So that's how this got started. So as we got started, and this was just before and during COVID, we started looking at what could we do to better prepare faith communities to deal with end of life situations. And so we got in that, and then COVID prevented a whole nother dynamic of situations. And so what we found there is that the faith communities really, really needed help in all kinds of ways. And at that time, most of them were not up on social media platforms. And so we had to deviate for a minute to make sure that they were prepared to talk to their audiences. So after that, we began to develop our relationships with faith communities and faith leaders, and really found out that faith leaders are really caregivers and many of them needing care themselves. And also, there was kind of a disconnect with when family caregivers would come to faith communities with their concerns and crises, that many times faith communities were not prepared to meet their needs. And so we had all of these things that were going on, everybody at the table dealing with crisis. So we had to say, okay, now what can we do to help out? Because everybody needed some kind of respite, but the needs were just so massive. And
Right.
so we decided to take a preventative approach. And so the approach that the Detroit Family Caregiving Project is taking right now, and our project is called Living Our Legacies. And so basically, what we're doing is a planning and prevention approach to family caregiving. And as you know, and many of the people in the audience knows, I think Rosalind Carter coined, the terms that there's four kinds of people, and those people are people that have been caregivers, that are caregivers, uh, have been, will be, currently are, and people who will need care from someone else. And so basically what we found in working in with the church is that we're not prepared for any of those roles, at any kind of way. So the project focuses on all roles and works with congregations to look at ways to integrate that within their own cultures.
So there, again, as with all of your comments, and I mean that sincerely, there's just so much there that's important to call out and to name. First of all, that this is rooted in a very real need in terms of caregiving broadly. It became an even greater challenge in reality during COVID, which happened as you were building this and having to be thoughtful about it. It's also about engaging an absolutely critical institution in Black life, which are our faith communities, and the realities that while, and these are my words, not yours, that while congregations are largely well-meaning and want to be everything to people, that they were not equipped for this particular ministry and this particular demand in their folks. And so there's just so much there that's really, really important. And as I've shared with you in previous conversations, and when I was with you and so many other wonderful people in Detroit for 3 days, what you are doing, much like the altar project, and I'm so thrilled to see that there is some overlap between congregations.
Mm-hmm.
But what you are doing and your team and the congregations are doing is you are building and learning in a way that's extremely important for everywhere, because the caregiving needs of everybody, but in our instance, Black families and the presence of Black congregations and what that means is present whether you're in Detroit, Atlanta, or Savannah, or Baton Rouge, or Charlotte, or Los Angeles. It's the same realities, and so your work and the important way that you have gone about it and the learnings and the way that you're capturing them is just so absolutely critical. And so I am thrilled to introduce to some folks who aren't familiar with it the important work you're doing, and we'll continue to lift it up as a way to learn. I did want to mention, go ahead.
No, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And so, one of the ways in which you guys describe the experience is one that is an interactive approach that builds upon the lived experiences, stories, and wisdoms of the participants. As you well know, the third pillar of Aging While Black is lean into Sankofa, which is
Right.
just making the wisdom of the elders available in ways that strengthen our present and our future. And so, how is that being played out in the Detroit Family Caregiving Project?
Okay, so we come to the project looking at the faith communities as an asset. and with the competency of caring, and caregiving. That's what they do. Every faith tradition cares for its people. So we come with that, saying, okay, what can we learn from you about caring? You're the experts. What can we learn? So, and again, I just have to really preface this by saying that this is organic. So we learn. We learn. We've done some things that worked, done some things that didn't work. So as we started working on this, we would talk about caregiving, but it would also, anytime you talk about this, the conversation very quickly goes to end of life, and it kind of goes to death. And basically, we're not talking about dying, we're talking about living. And so, how do we talk about living the best lives that we actually can within the space of faith? And so, what we decided that we had to change this conversation and the whole notion of what later life meant, but also recognizing possibilities that are going to happen in later life with your aging, possible illness, possible disability, possible end of life, possible grief, or possible reinvention after all of those things. And so we decided that we had to build cultures that could be readily available for people as they were going through those stages of life. So that's how we've been interacting with the churches. So as we look at the culture, we look at the beliefs, the traditions within our faith communities, what can we build upon that we already have? Because we already have a legacy of care. And so what we did was to build a model that the faith communities could take and implement them in their own way based upon their own doctrines or acts of caring. And we had to distinguish between caring, and caregiving. So basically, you got to care before you can get into the act of caring or become what we know, as a caregiver, in the space that we're working out of. So, and then communities of care. And so again, churches really bring really just so much rich history, and they bring the, what can I say, the package, if you will, that all this can be done in so quickly because we have communities where people meet, where people fellowship. So how do we integrate this into the things that you're already doing? And so that's the space we've been living in there.
And living it quite well, I might add.
Thank you.
So I want to share some words with you, and
Mhm.
they come from looking at information about the work, because I believe words matter, and I always find interesting the words that people use to describe or to surround the work that they do. And so the words that caught my attention when I looked at this important project were current acts of care, caregiving that fosters support, healing spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, and physically. Why are these words important to the project?
Okay, all those words are important to the project because we're taking a holistic approach to this. We're looking at the whole person. And again, we use the word legacy because it encompasses living life as well as creating afterlife. And what we wanted to do was to deal with the whole person and come uh, to this conversation or to this community, to this culture, not looking at it necessarily from a financial perspective, because most times when you talk about legacy, it's maybe an estate planner talking to you about legacy. And so what we wanted to do was to look at this from two perspectives. The internal perspective. So the words that you just mentioned are the internal perspectives. What do we think about when we think about this? What are our wishes as we move forward for the things that may not be readily articulated? What are our beliefs? What are the customs? What are the values, the traditions? What makes me whole? And so as we look at all of those words, we see that as the soft side of this. And then once those things are talked about in community, in an interactive community, and again, going back to that just for a minute, we have found that the wisdom in the community from people who have already gone through what somebody may be going through can add to and shape the points that people are right now. So we look at the words that you just articulated as our pillars. So what do we need spiritually? What do we need mentally? We look at environment. Environmentally. What do we need? Is it a safe space? And so that's our holistic approach, looking at the whole person and making sure that their wishes are honored and that they can articulate what their wishes are. One of the things that we found as we continuously work on this project is that a lot of people don't think their life has any meaning. They'll say things, oh, just throw the dirt on me. But it's kind of like, oh, what about your life that you live? Wouldn't you like to leave some information for people in your family and for the world? After you're here. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is building up people and getting them to see the value that they bring and the value of the legacies that they can leave.
I'm going to fight the temptation to say too much, because there is. So a critical focus of the project, I'm getting a little feedback, Doctor, and I don't know if it's me or, but a critical focus of the project is to develop a critical mass of individuals who plan and prepare for later life occurrences. So clear, so concise. And as you and I have talked about, this first pillar of Aging While Black is recalibrate the village. Is that what you believe that this work is in part?
Exactly. And, I very quickly saw that as I heard you talk. Yes, it's building a village. It's building, everybody's not on board and in the village yet, because as we talk about the villages, we have to listen, we have to learn, we have to be compassionate. And I can just say some of the things that we laugh about many times is our own idiosyncrasies as Black people. Like, we don't want to talk about it because that may come to pass. And so we have to deal with all that, but it's a space that I'm loving being in because I understand who we are. And so, yes, it's building a village. And so as we say that, in our terms, it's building cultures and communities. And the space that we're in right now are congregations, which is a mix of that. But we see our work going much further than that. We, see doing, fraternities, sororities, communities. And so we're just beginning right now in the space that we're in. But it is developing villages.
And I look forward to being on that journey with you. So you started in congregations, you see all of these other opportunities to make a difference. What have you learned about engaging Black congregations?
Oh, well, it's a job. Well, actually, I really feel that I was God sent to do this work. I have the patience, and Lord Jesus, it takes patience. What has struck me most, we had talked about this early on, engagement. Engaging the Black communities. Actually, and I've worked, like I said, in corporate America, but engaging community-based African American churches has maybe been one of the biggest challenges as it relates to engagement that I've ever encountered. And so, as many of us know, you can't get into the church unless you get, into the culture of the church unless you deal with the leader, which should be. But getting to the leader can be problematic. And then also when you get to the leader, helping them to understand that they don't have to do it all, that we can develop a culture here where other people can be deployed to help you out in this. And so a lot of our work is undoing the thinking, helping them to craft their ministries in a way that it can be open to the content that we want to deliver. I have a very, very high regard for our Black churches. The Black churches remain, the central point of contact for our people. So I have a very high regard. I also have a greater sensitivity as to all of the issues that faith leaders have to deal with. So with all of that, what I'm learning is that we have to be patient, and that also that there are so many people within the congregations who want to lead if they're given the opportunity and if they're given the leadership.
So one of my observations about your work is also that, in addition to being patient, I was struck by the fact when I was in Detroit and we were at the Aging Expo, and you had this panel of churches that I think you had 4 congregations represented, and each of the representatives that you had occupied a different role in their congregation. And so the learning that it took on your part and your project's part to understand that in this congregation, it may be the pastor of the pastoral care, or it may be this ministry, or it may be this, the health ministry, or it may be this in the congregation. And so, this not showing up with a one size fits all, here's our motto and here's how it has to go, is I think a really valuable practice that you have built into this project. And I also love, Dr. Hubbard, that you are ingraining this into the culture of the congregation. So this becomes something that they own and something that they build, and something that they make certain works for the people in their congregation and their community. And so there are some really important things that you are doing and learning as it relates to caregiving. But there is another set of things that you are doing and learning that I think are important to Black aging as it relates specifically to congregations. And one of the things that I really look forward to in our friendship and in our partnership and in you and the Detroit Family Caregiving Project, being a part of that Aging While Black umbrella, is being able to share with you those really important learnings so that they are available to other institutions and organizations, because it's some really important stuff that's happening.
Yeah, and we've been very mindful of during surveys and evaluations. And so where we are right now, like I said, is an evolution. We did go in being very directive. This is what we want. And they had to say, hey, look, you're not in corporate America anymore. You're in the church. So they had to slap my hand, and so I had to say, okay, this is the outcome we want, and you all do it your way. And so, I've had to lighten up and adjust to where I am.
You
Um,
had to be adaptive.
mhm.
And so many entities, first of all, so many entities that seek to engage or provide a service, if you will, to Black elders and the communities that surround them show up in slices. And by that I mean what is really uh, impressive to me about some of those words I read to you, and the words that you said back to me, Dr. Hubbard, is holistic. And so while you are looking at the caregiving lens, you are looking at people's lives and their experiences holistically. And so many people who show up don't do that. They show up only interested in their little slice of this person and this person's life. The second thing is, while you may have shown up being prescriptive, when you recognize that that was not going to create the outcomes, you adapted. And so many entities who show up, not only in Black congregations, but in Black communities, are prescriptive in here's what we're going to do, even if it doesn't fit with the culture of our people, our communities, and our institutions. And so I think that that is an important learning from the work that you are doing.
And if you don't mind, I could just say this is innovation. And one of the things that I'm grateful for is my funder and supporter, which is the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation and the Detroit Area Agency on Aging. So much of this, kind of has been led personality. I know them, they know me, but they've given us an opportunity to learn. So we did not have to write a proposal and say, this is what we are about. So what we do is go back to them and say, this is what we've learned, and this is where we want to go from here. So the innovative approach has really, really helped us to develop the outcomes, that we've developed so far, and it's going to be real important. And then even getting people to understand, the difference between change and transformation. Some people want to change and go, I'm aging, but I still want to be 27. And to say, no, I'm aging, but you're 70. And you've never been 70 before. So what does 70 look like? It doesn't look like 27. And so being able to be innovative and generative has really been part of the success of what we do.
We're going to come back to that word innovation in just a minute. And so I want to give to you the official Aging While Black magic wand. Now that you have it temporarily, because I do need to get it back from you, but now that you have the Aging While Black magic wand, what are you going to transform about aging in America, and why?
What I would like to transform about aging in America is how we feel about ourselves and how we live into that future. And to realize that we have the ability to impact what our future looks like. And I say that by looking at, the statistics here in Detroit, within, the 65 plus age group, many of us have at least 3 chronic diseases that we're dealing with. Well, that can be managed, to see that we have some agency over what happens to us as we age. But it's just not being old and becoming elderly and immobile. So the magic wand was getting people to see what they are and what they can contribute, and a world where people value the opinions and the wisdom of elders, and a world, that looks at, the 7 areas that we impact. We've been impacted by 3 generations before us. Our parents, our grandparents, and our great grandparents. But now we're influencing our children, and their children. So being able to look at who we are and looking at the contributions we can make and being respected and honored for that.
Oh boy, the word Sankofa just comes to mind there. And so I like to close the time with wonderful people like you by uh, reminding that at Aging While Black, we exist to transform the aging landscape by cultivating a vibrant network of partners, innovations, and opportunities that centers Black elders. What is your best hope for Aging While Black?
Well, my best hope, and I love the word that I see in some of your literature where you say a movement. So my best hope is that it would be a movement with all generations, understanding aging and being active in that movement, and also being able to create a world um, that honors all of us, and that's for generations to come.
Dr. Marilyn French Hubbard, it has been a joy to spend this time with you. There's just so much here that we could continue to explore, and we'll make space to do that again in the future. But thank
It's
you.
my pleasure, my pleasure.
Thank
We're
you.
only beginning.
It is. It
Mhm.
is. It is. And to those of you who are joining us, who are watching this, we'd love to hear your comments. We invite you to share the link to this conversation with your networks as we continue to explore just some of the amazing things that are happening across America, to make certain that that intersection of aging and race happens as an asset and as a benefit rather than a negative experience. And so God bless each of you. Thank you, and we'll see you next month on awB Live.
Thank you.